It was a very hot summer. Each day the sun rose high in the blue sky, and the fields shimmered in the heat. The hedgerow was quiet, and many of the mice preferred to stay inside their shady cottages, trying to keep cool. Out of doors, the best place to be was down by the stream. The mice gathered there in the afternoon, sat under the bank in the shade, and dangled their paws and tails in the clear water. On the banks of the stream were the flour and dairy mills. The flow of the water turned the wheels, which ground the flour and churned the butter for Bramley Hedge. Poppy Eyebright looked after the dairy stump. She supervised the large vat into which the milk, kindly given by some friendly cows, was poured and stored. The many kitchens where cheeses were drained and shaped, smoked and wrapped, were also in her care. Poppy was not fond of hot weather. Her pats of butter began to melt unless they were wrapped in cool dock leaves, and the pots of cream had to be hung in the mill pool to keep them fresh. When her work was finished, she would wander out by the mill wheel, enjoying the splash of cool water. The flour mill, further down the stream, was run by the miller, Dusty Dogwood. Dogwood was his family name, but he was called Dusty because he was always covered from tail to whiskers with flour dust. He was a cheerful and friendly mouse, like his father, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather, who had all run the mill before him. He loved the fine weather and strolled up and down the stream, chatting to the paddlers and dabblers. His walks took him past the dairy, where he would often see Poppy standing by the stream, looking very pretty. As the long, hot days went by, Dusty used to spend more and more time walking up to the dairy, and Poppy used to go out more and more often to the mossy shadows of the mill wheel. Early in June, Miss Poppy Eyebright and Mr. Dusty Dogwood officially announced their engagement. Everyone along the hedgerow was delighted. Midsummer's Day was picked for the wedding, and preparations were started at once. Poppy was so sure the weather would hold that they decided that the wedding should take place on the stream. It was the coolest place, and besides, it was very romantic. Dusty found a large, flat piece of bark up in the woods, which is a party of mice carried down to the water's edge. It was floated with some difficulty just under the mill weir. They tethered it midstream by plaited rush and nettled ropes. Poppy prepared her trousseau every afternoon. She sat in the shade of some tall kingcups, embroidering her wedding dress, which she hid as soon as she saw anyone coming along the path. The wedding day drew on at last. The sky was clear and blue, and it was hotter than ever. The kitchens of Bramley Hedge were full of activity. Cool summer foods were being made. There was cold watercress soup, fresh dandelion salad, honey cream, salabubs, and marigoules. The young mice had been up early to gather huge baskets of wild strawberries. Basil selected some of the select wines, primrose, meadowsweet, and elderflower, and hung them in the rushes. Basil was in charge of all the cellars under the store stump. He was a stout, good-natured mouse with long white whiskers and a sensitive nose for fine wine. In her room above the dairy, Poppy dressed carefully. She polished her whiskers and dabbed rosewater behind her ears. Her straw bonnet, which Lady Woodmouse had trimmed with flowers, hung from the bedpost, and her bridal posy lay waiting on the window-sill. She peeped at her reflection in the sunny wardrobe door, took a deep breath, and ran downstairs to join her bridesmaids. Dusty kept his best suit in a basket under the stairs to protect it from the moths. He put it on and tucked a daisy into his buttonhole. I'd better just check that barley I grew yesterday, he said to himself. He ran up the steps at such a pace that the whole mill seemed to shake. The wooden floor above him let down a cloud of dust all over the new wedding suit. Bother it, he said, sitting on a sack of corn and looking at his molted jacket in dismay. There was a thumping on the door below, and his friend Conker called through the letter box. Dusty, are you ready? It's nearly time to go. Dusty sighed and went morosely down the stairs. As soon as Conker saw him, he began to giggle. Dusty by name, Dusty by nature, he said, trying to remedy matters with his clean handkerchief. The flowery dust swirled and settled again on the whiskers, tails, on whiskers, tails, and best clothes and buttonholes. The two mice looked at each other and started to laugh. They laughed so much that they had to sit down on a flour bag to recover. The wedding was to take place at midday, and Dusty and Conker arrived just in time. The guests were all in their finest clothes. 3 young mice, dressed in smart blue suits, had been chosen as pages and were busily directing everyone in their place. Miss Apple discreetly tried to dust down the groom and best man, but to little avail.